Hello, everyone. Welcome to A Jew Like Me. My name is Jessica Israel, and this is a podcast for all of us who love Torah, but have felt like we are not fully represented in mainstream Jewish life or the pop culture idea of who a Jew is or what a Jew looks like. We are the children of Abraham, and this podcast is to create our place at the table, let our voices be heard, and celebrate the multiculturalism of Judaism. Let's get into our episode. Hi everyone, welcome to A Jew Like Me. Thank you for listening to this one. It's very interesting. This has been on my mind, and we're actually going to go over a couple Tanakh verses today, because something that I've realized in general in this world is that we have started to not be able to separate, or I guess pay attention to the difference of believing in God versus believing God, right? So you can believe in God. You can believe that God exists, but do you believe God? Are you believing what he says? Are you fully trusting him? And it hit me because I realized in our society, especially in the US, a lot of times we will repeat things or adapt things into our life that we don't even realize essentially comes from Christian ideology. And you may say, what? No, we don't. I mean, we absolutely do. It's everywhere here. And you think about certain things where you hear a lot of times, and I think people have adopted this idea of, you need faith the size of a mustard seed, right? Well, that comes from the Christian New Testament, okay? And the interesting thing about that is that that's actually harmful. And hear me out on this. It's harmful because it literally goes against what Torah says. All the time that you hear or you see what God has spoken through the prophets, he doesn't say you need a little bit of faith and things will go okay. In fact, he says the opposite. He literally chastises us for having just a little bit of doubt. You see multiple instances where things go wrong. And even, we could think about King Saul, right? The first king that was chosen for Israel. And, how the people were saying, we want a king. And, it actually disappointed God because he's like, well, why do you need a king? Why are my prophets not good enough? Why do you need a physical manifestation of a king when I am your king? I am your savior. God is. There is none but him, right? And that was disappointing because it was this doubt. Of course they believed in God. They were Jews. They were Israelites. They believed in God. They believed in the God of Abraham. Some may have been doing some funny stuff, but it doesn't mean all of them were worshiping idols and things like that. And then you saw what happened with Saul when he didn't wait for Samuel to return as Samuel had asked him to. And, he did the sacrifice himself. And he got punished for that. And, his throne was essentially, God had deemed that it would be taken from him because he didn't believe God. He went on his own accord and said, well, you know what, even though, I'm just, paraphrasing here, even though I was told that Samuel's going to return and wait for him to return, it doesn't look like he's here yet, so I'm just going to do this. That's not believing God. And trust, Saul believed in God. He knew the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. He knew who God was, but he didn't believe God. And that's something that I want to talk about because, like I said, I think that's very important. Because we think that if we just have a little bit of faith, then that's all we need. No, that's not all you need. In fact, you have to think of it in the opposite way, as I said. If you have a little bit of doubt, you need to toss that to the side because that will actually derail you. Everything that God says, he says to trust him with all of you. When you think about the V'ahavta, right? And it literally says, and you shall love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. God literally requires it of us to love him with all of us, to trust him with all of us. He doesn't say a little bit, well, it's okay if you doubt me here and there. No, believing him, not just believing in him. Anyone can believe God exists. Think about it, even in the Torah and in the Tanakh throughout. You see other peoples who will say, other nations, foreign nations that will say, oh, well, we know your God does this, but maybe we think ours can beat him. They didn't not believe that the God of Abraham existed. That was never a question, actually, if you think about it. Within the Bible, that's never been a question. Even foreign peoples, they never doubted that our God existed, but they may have believed that the false gods they were serving were stronger, or they didn't believe our God in the words that he was saying, or thought that they could circumvent that, right? So that's really important to understand, because many times we see the Israelites also really mess up and go into idolatry. And the interesting thing is, a lot of times they would still be worshiping God, which was crazy. They could be worshiping God and then they'll be worshiping Baal and whoever else, right? Or they'll be worshiping God, but then say, okay, well, I'm going to make this calf, this image of something. And, this is going to be my representation of him, which is wrong, which we're not supposed to do. Obviously, we know that. But it's so interesting when you recognize the importance of believing God and what that takes. It takes all of you. And I have a couple verses I want to share that really hits home with this. And they're not really in any particular order, but Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path smooth, or make your path straight. Again, in all your ways acknowledge him. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. We literally have to give our full being, our full heart to God. That's believing God, not just believing in him. Isaiah 26:9 says, at night I yearn for you with all my being. I seek you with all the spirit within me. For when your judgments are wrought on earth, the inhabitants of the world learn righteousness. All my being, all the spirit within me. Isaiah 25:9. In that day they shall say, this is our God. We trusted in him, and he delivered us. This is the Lord in whom we trusted. Let us rejoice and exult in his deliverance. Again, trusting God, believing God. Proverbs 9:10. The beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. And when we say fear, it's respect, it's reverence. And then there's also another passage, I'm not sure if I have this up, but it actually defines righteousness as wisdom and understanding. And so here it tells you what wisdom is. Wisdom is fear of the Lord, reverence of God, right? Knowledge of him. His knowledge is Torah, his words, how to serve him, and discernment in telling you how you can apply that to your life and in every moment. That's understanding. And you need wisdom and understanding to be a righteous person. So it's not just believing in God. It's not just being, oh, I'm nice. It's fully trusting him, educating yourself on his word and living in that. Isaiah 33:15. He who walks in righteousness, which is wisdom and understanding, he who walks in righteousness, speaks uprightly, spurns profit from fraudulent dealings, waves away a bribe instead of grasping it, stops his ears against listening to infamy, shuts his eyes against looking at evil. Right? And then I have one more in here. And this is 1 Kings 2:3. It says, keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and following his laws, his commandments, his rules, and his admonitions as recorded in the teaching of Moses, in order that you may succeed in whatever you undertake and wherever you turn. But yes, so this is just something, like I said, I wanted to get on here and really talk about, because we say we believe in God, but sometimes, we just go through our day real quick. Maybe you do a prayer here and there. Maybe you're doing things by rote, but are you really believing Him? And are you really talking to Him? Are you really asking Him, hey, what should I do, God? Not just praying for something. God is not a genie in the sky, which I feel like for many people, they've kind of turned Him into that, where I just know God's going to give me everything, and that's it. I'm just going to pray for this and He's going to give it to me. And it's like, no, we're here to serve Him. Literally, you actually see that a lot of times throughout the Torah specifically. It even talks about, why we were freed from Egypt, what our purpose here is on earth. It literally says, I did this so you can serve me. God repeats that multiple times. And so to serve Him, then it goes further with your whole heart, your whole being. So I just wanted to really hit that home. I thought that was something that's really eye-opening and important, and kind of a checkpoint for many of us that I think we should probably, take in our lives, to stop and say, okay, obviously I believe in God, but have I been believing God? Have I been following Him with my whole heart? No one's perfect. No one's asking you to be perfect, right? But you don't need to be perfect to fully trust in God, to seek Him with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your spirit. You don't need to be perfect for that. In Samuel, it talks about how God was seeking a man after His own heart, right? Meaning God's own heart. And that's what He found in David. And King David, was not perfect. King David made mistakes, but he was a man after God's own heart. And I think that's very important. And that's why he's so respected and revered and memorialized and loved, absolutely loved. And of course, loved by God and loved by His people. He was a man after God's own heart. He may have made mistakes, and there were times where he fell, but his foundation was making sure that he was seeking God with all of his heart. And that's what we all need to do. So ask yourself, do you just believe in God, or do you believe God? Thank you so much for listening to our podcast today. I really appreciate the support. If you would like to get in touch or stay connected, please visit us on our Twitter or Instagram at A Jew Like Me. Also, if you're interested and would like to send a personal donation, because this is a labor of love, my Cash App is Torah Blessed, TorahBlessed. Thank you again so much for the support, guys, and I really look forward to chatting again next time.